Hello and welcome to WrestleTalk Breaking News. Our story today is the Elite will be remaining elite in AEW, as it has just been reported by Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated that all four members of the Elite, that being the Young Bucks, Nick Jackson and Matt Jackson, Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, have all signed new multi-year deals to remain in All Elite Wrestling. This, of course, has been a topic of speculation, conversation amongst wrestling media over the course of 2023, as it is now winding down on their original deals signed when the company first launched in 2019. Now, I think a lot of people, myself included, always looked at this as the most likely scenario, with the Elite, of course, being, in many people's opinions, the lifeblood of all elite wrestling. But there was always topics of conversation involved where, was there a chance that they could go to WWE? Were contract negotiations taking longer than expected? Were the Young Bucks, were Kenny Omega, were Hangman Page, were they all looking to remain in AEW or go to WWE, go somewhere else, try newer pastures, whatnot? I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that they would remain in AEW, and so they have. The Elite, of course, were the founding members of AEW, along with a very select few other people in AEW when the company launched at the beginning of 2019. Names like MJF, Chris Jericho, Pac, other names that started the company as well. But the Elite, of course, Nick Jackson, Matt Jackson, Kenny Omega, shared the tags of executive vice presidents of the company as well. Now,
I prefer Ezekiel vice.
Ezekiel vice presidents? Sure, why not? Yeah, they're Christian AF. Thank you, Pete. Now, of course, those tags, you've got it in my head now. Thank you so much. Those executive vice president tags that they have had seem to have wavered in strength over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, with lots of people saying that the executive vice president title that the Young Bucks had was more or less a title and less so being in charge of any particular area of the company, as they were during the first year that the company was in existence. Regardless, the EVPs of AEW will be remaining with AEW, and that is very exciting to see. There is no word currently on the exact length of these deals, but we are told that it is a multi-year extension, so we should expect to see the Elite in AEW for the foreseeable future. Now, there were a number of quotes as well. Now, bear with me, I'm going to read off of my phone because this was a very meaty report. Make sure you check out Sports Illustrated and all of Justin Barrasso's reporting in order to get the full story. But a few of the more pertinent quotes to come out of this, one of which came from Tony Khan, the, of course, owner and president of All Elite Wrestling, saying, "The Elite have been so important to the launch of AEW, with the Young Bucks going all in when I first approached them in 2018 about my dream to create an international pro wrestling promotion. Shortly after that, their partners and closest friends Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page joined us to formally launch All Elite Wrestling. All four of them have been instrumental to AEW's success from the very first episode of Dynamite in 2019 through the present day. Now, as we celebrate tonight's 200th episode of Dynamite, I'm excited to share that Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Adam Page will all be staying in AEW for years to come. We look forward to celebrating the great news with fans around the world." This, of course, does come on the eve of Dynamite 200. Can't believe it's been 4 years since the show's launch originally. And now we don't really know what is next for the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Page as it pertains to their on-screen content. Of course, they have just seemingly finished up their months-long feud with the Blackpool Combat Club, culminating that feud in Blood and Guts. They have not been seen since Blood and Guts, which also featured the arrival of Kota Ibushi, someone who has an extensive history with both the Young Bucks and, in particular, Kenny Omega. So that could be a first few steps for them to take going forward, probably involving Don Callis, as we have yet to see that storyline aspect wrapped up. But it is very interesting to now look to the future, because I don't want to bring this person's name into every bit of news that comes out of AEW. But when CM Punk and the Elite's altercation took place last year, there was obviously a lot of talk about what that would mean for the Elite going forward as they were entering negotiations with their contract, but evidently it didn't hold too much weight as they have now re-signed. There were a few other quotes that I'd like to read through first, explaining why the Elite have taken it upon themselves to re-sign with the company. One of which came from Kenny Omega, who talked about why he decided to re-sign, what AEW means to him, and what sort of things go into that decision. He said, "Pro wrestling has a presence almost everywhere on the planet. In my pursuit to become as complete of a performer as possible, my goal has always been to experience the styles of the world at their highest level. I believe that with AEW's current working relationships and possibly future, I can challenge all forms of pro wrestling and diversify my style so that I'm equipped for any scenario I may enter in the ring." As well as saying, going forward, because there's a lot of quotes in here, so bear with me a little bit. Bear with me. Kenny Omega says, goodness me. He talks about having family, not having to play into his decision making, because of course he's not married. Not unless you count Kota Ibushi, which I do. My goodness. Yes, he says this. Pardon me. Says, "Up to this point, I've made the choice to sacrifice everything in the name of pro wrestling. I can't say that family or my kids influenced the decision to stay with AEW. I'm not married and without kids, but what I can say is that I'm incredibly proud of my match catalog and the wonderful people I've met and continue to meet. AEW not only allows me to continue doing what I do at a high level, but also the freedom to pursue some other passions I have in life, which after nearly 25 years in the ring have become more and more important to me." Now, Kenny Omega, for example, is obviously an avid gamer and has been very hands-on with the creation of AEW Fight Forever, their video game that just released last month, or should I say 2 months ago. It's August now. They have obviously continued that working relationship with Kenny Omega. He has been someone who has been very hands-on in different aspects of AEW, as well as things in other ventures, and that has always very clearly been important to him, and something that WWE, for example, has not necessarily played well with, considering outside ventures are not necessarily their strong suit. Whether that played into his decision of whether or not to focus on WWE as a possibility, of course, is unclear, but it is clear that AEW holding that kind of loose ability to go and do more or less what Kenny Omega wants has played into his decision to re-sign. This is a very exciting time for AEW. We have seen them play host to probably the most acclaimed storyline over the first few years of the company's existence, with Hangman Page's ascent to the top of AEW, beating Kenny Omega, and a storyline that has continued given that Hangman Page has now rejoined the Elite. Hangman Page, of course, of the 4 men that have re-signed, is the one without an executive vice president tag, an Ezekiel vice president tag, if you prefer.
I do.
As Pete does, I know. So to see him stay in AEW is also very encouraging, as he is also someone who has had problems with CM Punk. Hangman Page obviously also came up in the CM Punk interview that came out just a few months ago, and there was obviously lots of talk about whether that would influence his decision at all, but it is very encouraging to see that that hasn't been the case. That will pretty much wrap up our breaking news video here. For any other topics involving the Elite re-signing with AEW, make sure you go over to WrestleTalk.com for much more detail and much more extensive reporting as we will continue to cover this story as it goes forward. Of course, make sure to check out Justin Barrasso's original report with Sports Illustrated. And I have been Tempest, and I will see you next time. Elite that Elite.